From MTN News, you're watching Montana This Morning.
In court, Montana Republicans say mail-in ballots lead to widespread voter fraud in the state. Coming up, the battle to stop local mail-in elections.
I'm Mike Dennison in Helena. Outside spending in the Montana governor's race is approaching $20 million. Coming up, I'll have the details.
6:30 on this Wednesday. Chet Layman, Matt Elwell with you here. We continue working through a pretty nice morning, a little hazier than it was yesterday. That was to be expected, I guess.
Yeah, it's always a guess. The air quality is pretty tough because there's a lot of factors that go in. We get more of a west wind versus an east wind, and that can change things, or vice versa, depending on
flow at different levels. All of that stuff.
It all works its way back in.
I pay attention when you talk about this stuff. I really do.
I'm glad somebody is.
It makes one of us.
A moderate air quality this morning, certainly a little worse than it has been the last few days. I don't think we're going to have to deal with this for a long period, but certainly over the next 24 to 36 hours, the potential of moderate air quality or worse could be in play. Temperatures into the 40s for most of us. Day planner calling for highs into the mid to upper 70s today. A little more of a breeze. Could pose problems heading into your Thursday, however. We'll talk more about that coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you, Matt. It is now 6:31. Attorneys for the Republican Party and the Trump campaign accuse Montana Governor Steve Bullock of creating chaos with his decision allowing counties to implement vote by mail if they wish in November. But attorneys for the state and other parties to the suit say the GOP throwing county election officials a curve, showing no evidence mail ballots will lead to fraud. MTN's Dennis Bragg was in court for this critical hearing.
Attorneys are trying to convince Judge Dana Christensen to rule as counties plan on using vote by mail as a safety precaution during the pandemic. The Republican contingent filed the suits claiming the governor overstepped his authority delegated by the legislature when he issued the August 6th directive allowing counties to decide which process to use in the general election.
If we let the government violate our rights just based on their own convenience, whatever cost and expense they may have to go through to actually not violate our rights, the government would always have a reason to violate our rights.
But the attorneys for the interveners in the case argue Bullock was well within his emergency powers, saying it would create complete confusion if the court stopped vote-by-mail plans at this late date.
And now at the last minute, order all those clerks to change up. There are all kinds of problems. Problems with locations, problems with getting enough judges, problems with what to do with the ballots, problems with removing the same-day voters from a big pool of ballots that includes everybody.
While both arguments touch on the mechanics of running an election, the real push is over who has the authority to make voting changes.
The vote-by-mail system has security features that even in-person elections don't have. We know how to vote by mail. We do it routinely. It's safe, it's secure, and no one has to face that choice between do I get exposed to the virus or do I vote?
You can't have a governor seize power, overturn a state statute on the eve of an election, and then do what they were arguing. Governor Bullock was arguing that, well, so what? I mean, you can't go, protect those rights, federal court, because it'll be inconvenient for us to do so.
Judge Christensen said he had a lot of work to do before issuing a ruling, but he said he'll do everything he can to reach that decision as quick as humanly possible.
And that decision may hinge on questions the judge had over a lack of hard evidence of election fraud in Montana. In Missoula, Dennis Bragg, MTN News.
Now, 46 of Montana's counties plan to run the election completely through the mail, but the state says every county will offer some provision for people who still want to vote in person. Well, as we've reported in Montana's gubernatorial race, Republican Greg Gianforte has outspent Democrat Mike Cooney by a 3-to-1 margin so far, thanks in part to $3.5 million that Gianforte has contributed from his own pocket. As MTN's chief political reporter Mike Dennison tells us, outside spending by various groups will likely approach $20 million by Election Day.
Democrat Mike Cooney has spent about $2 million on his campaign so far, compared to $6.4 million for Republican Greg Gianforte. But Cooney is getting considerable assistance from outside groups. Chief among them is a group called Good Jobs MT, a political action committee financed primarily by the Democratic Governors Association. It had spent $4.3 million through the end of August, and has spent or booked another $3.5 million in TV ad time through October. Some of that money has assisted other groups helping Cooney, like the Montana 55 Plus Action Fund and the Montana Conservation Voters Action Fund, which has added another $560,000 of its own spending. And the labor union representing public school teachers and other public employees, the Montana Federation of Public Employees, has spent $2.23 million on ads going after Gianforte or otherwise aiding Cooney. All told, these outside groups are on tap to spend about $11 million on Cooney's behalf in the campaign. On the other side, there is RGA Right Direction PAC, which is financed by the Republican Governors Association. It says it has spent about $4.5 million on Gianforte's behalf, primarily on TV ads attacking Cooney, and has reserved another $3.75 million in TV time through October. That's $8.25 million of outside money helping Gianforte's campaign. So when you add it all together, including the candidate spending, Gianforte still has the edge, but not by much, sort of like the race itself, which is still considered the only closely competitive governor's race in the nation. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
6:35 now. This weekend, MTN kicks off our series of debates for U.S. Senate, Montana Governor, and on Saturday, the U.S. House. Democrat Kathleen Williams and Republican Matt Rosendale take center stage with our panel of reporters, including Jay Cohn, Jill Valley, and Mike Dennison. You can watch it Saturday night on KBZK at 6 o'clock, KXLF, or through any of the various streaming apps, Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, or Android TV. Well, September is National Suicide Prevention Month. The Montana Veterans Administration encouraging all Montanans to have a role in preventing suicide in their community. Each year, more than 45,000 Americans, including more than 6,000 veterans, die by suicide. COVID has added additional stresses, and the Montana VA reports around 600 Montana veterans or active duty personnel reached out for help last month alone. VA staff want people to know that help is available and hope more veterans will reach out before they're in crisis.
I know that when we are going through those situations, it can feel very disheartening, but there is hope and there's people who want to help to support.
Now, if you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help. The National Suicide Lifeline is available at all hours. We have more on suicide prevention resources on our website. Well, what should we call it? Butte Silver Bowl Parks and Recreation looking for your ideas naming the new clubhouse at the Highland View Golf Course. These are pictures from yesterday at Stoughton Park. Clubhouse is next to the building that houses the carousel. A committee has been formed to review name suggestions and make recommendation to the board at the October 12th meeting. Name suggestions can be sent to nametheclubhouse@bsb.mt.gov. All names will be reviewed and considered by the committee. Deadline for getting yours in Monday, October 5th. 6:37 now. We're going to take a quick break on Montana This Morning. When we come back, Walmart will approach the holiday shopping season quite differently this season because of the pandemic. After the break, find out what will change. First, let's find out what's happening at 7 o'clock on CBS This Morning.
Good morning. Ahead on CBS This Morning, Cindy McCain endorses Joe Biden. We'll ask the widow of Republican Senator John McCain why she thinks a Democrat should be the next president. Also, we're in Louisville, where safety precautions are in place as the city awaits a decision on possible charges in the Breonna Taylor case. And Jeff Daniels talks about taking on the role of former FBI Director James Comey in the Comey Rule, heralded as a behind-the-scenes account of the 2016 election. All that coming up when we see you at 7.